Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night, depending on, where you are in this world. God bless you. This is Gloria White coming to you from Utah, USA. Today we are going to be in the New Jerusalem Holy Bible, and we are going to start the book of Tobit, Tobit. And here we go. The book of Tobit. Tobit tells of the reward of perseverance in good works. Tobit's devotion to the law and to the Jewish way of life is answered by God's watchful benevolence, as shown in the mission of the guiding angels who writes the family fortunes. The story is set in Nineveh sometime during the exile, but details of history and geography are telescoped and are not important to the appreciation of the story. The book was written in 200 BC and existed only in Greek and Syriac translations until Hebrew fragments were recently found at Qumran, which is the Dead Sea Scrolls. Here we go. Tobit. The tale of Tobit, the son of Tobiel, son of Aniel, son of Adul, son of Gabiel, of the lineage of Aziel and tribe of Naphtali. In the days of Shalmaneser, king of Assyria, he was exiled from Thisbe, which is south of Kadesh Naphtali in Upper Galilee, above Hazor, some distance to the west, north of Shephat. Section 1. Tobit, the exile. I, Tobit, have walked in paths of truth and in good works all the days of my life. I have given much in alms to my brothers and fellow countryfolk, exiled like me to Nineveh in the country of Assyria. In my young days, when I was still at home in the land of Israel, the whole tribe of Naphtali, my ancestor, broke away from the house of David and from Jerusalem, though this was the city chosen out of all the tribes of Israel for their sacrifices. Here the temple, God's dwelling place, had been built and hallowed for all generations to come. All my brothers in the house of Naphtali sacrificed on every hilltop in Galilee to the calf that Jeroboam, king of Israel, had made at Dan. Often I was quite alone in making the pilgrimage to Jerusalem, fulfilling the law that binds all Israel perpetually. I would hurry to Jerusalem with the first yield of fruits and beasts, the tithe of cattle and the sheep's first shearings. I would give these to the priest, the sons of Aaron, for the altar. To the Levites ministering at Jerusalem I would give my tithe of wine and corn, olives, pomegranates, and other fruits. 6 years in succession I took the second tithe in money and went and paid it annually at Jerusalem. I gave the third to orphans and widows, and to the strangers who live among the Israelites. I brought it to them as a gift every 3 years. When we ate, we obeyed both the ordinances of the law of Moses and the exhortations of Deborah, the mother of our ancestor Ananiel, for my father had died and left me an orphan. When I came to a man's estate, I married a woman from our kinfolk, whose name was Anna. She bore me a son, whom I called Tobias. When the banishment into Assyria came, I was taken away and went to Nineveh. All my brothers and the people of my race ate the food of the heathen, but for my part I was careful not to eat the food of the heathen. And because I kept faith with my God with my whole heart, the Most High granted me the favor of Shalmaneser, and I became the king's purveyor. Until his death, I used to travel to Media, where I transacted business on his behalf, and I deposited sacks of silver worth 10 talents, with Gabael, the brother of Gabrias, at Rahanj in Media. On the death of Salmaneser, his son Sennacherib succeeded. The roads into Media were barred, and I could no longer go there. In the days of Shalmaneser, I had often given alms to the people of my race. I gave my bread to the hungry, and clothes to those who lacked them. And I buried, when I saw them, the bodies of my countryfolk, thrown over the walls of Nineveh. I also buried those who were killed by Sennacherib. When Sennacherib was beating a disorderly retreat from Judea after the King of Heaven had punished his blasphemies, he killed a great number of Israelites in his rage. So I stole their bodies to bury them. Sennacherib looked for them and could not find them. A Ninevite went and told the king it was I who buried them secretly. When I knew that the king had been told about me, and saw myself being hunted by men who would put me to death, I was afraid and fled. All my goods were seized. They were all confiscated by the treasury. Nothing was left me but my wife Anna and my son Tobias. Less than 40 days after this, the king was murdered by his 2 sons, who then fled to the mountains of Ararat. His son Esarhaddon succeeded. Ahikar, the son of my brother Aniel, was appointed chancellor of the exchequer for the kingdom and given the main ordering of affairs. Ahikar then interceded for me, and I was allowed to return to Nineveh, since Ahikar had been chief cupbearer, keeper of the signet, administrator and treasurer under Sennacherib, king of Assyria, and Esarhaddon had kept me in office. He was a relative of mine. He was my nephew. Tobit blinded. Section 2. Chapter 2. In the reign of Esarhaddon, therefore, I returned home, and my wife Anna was restored to me with my son Tobias. At our feast of Pentecost, the Feast of Weeks, there was a good dinner. I took my place for the meal. The table was brought to me, and various dishes were brought. I then said to my son Tobias, "Go, my child, and seek some poor, loyal-hearted man among our brethren exiled in Nineveh, and bring him to share my meal. I will wait until you come back, my child." So Tobias went out to look for some poor man among our brothers, but he came back and said, "Father." I replied, "What is it, my child?" He went on, "Father, one of our nation has just been murdered. He has been strangled and then thrown down in the marketplace. He is there still." I sprung up at once, left my meal untouched, took the man from the marketplace and hid him in one of my rooms, waiting until sunset to bury him. I came in again and washed myself and ate my bread in sorrow, remembering the words of the prophet Amos concerning Bethel. "I shall turn your festivals into mourning, and all your singing into lamentation." And I wept. When the sun was down, I went and dug a grave and buried him. My neighbors laughed and said, "See, he is not afraid any more." You must remember that a price had been set on my head earlier for this very thing. Once before he had to flee, yet here he is, beginning to bury the dead again. That night I took a bath. Then I went into the courtyard and lay down by the courtyard wall. Since it was not hot, I left my face uncovered. I did not know that there were sparrows in the wall above my head. Their hot droppings fell into my eyes. This caused white spots to form, which I went to have treated by the doctors. But the more ointments they tried with me, the more the spots blinded me, and in the end I became completely blind. I remained without sight 4 years. All my brothers were distressed on my behalf, and Ahikar provided for my upkeep for 2 years until he left for Elimaeus. My wife Anna then undertook women's work. She would spin wool and take cloth to weave. She used to deliver whatever had been ordered from her and then receive payment. Now, on the 7th day of the month of Diestros, she finished a piece of work and delivered it to her customers. They paid her all that was due, and into the bargain presented her with a kid for a meal. When the kid came into my house, it began to bleat. I called to my wife and said, "Where does this creature come from? Suppose it has been stolen. Let the owners have it back. We have no right to eat stolen goods." She said, "No, it was a present given me over and above my wages." I did not believe her and told her to give it back to the owners. I felt deeply ashamed of her. To which she replied, "What about your own alms? What about your good works? Everyone knows what return you have had for them." Chapter 3. Then, sad at heart, I sighed and wept, and began this prayer of lamentation. You are just, O Lord, and just are all your works. All your ways are grace and truth, and you are the judge of the world. Therefore, Lord, remember me, look on me. Do not punish me for my sins, or for my needless faults, or those of my ancestors. For we have sinned against you, and broken your commandments, and you have given us over to be plundered, to captivity and death, to be the talk, the laughing stock and scorn of all the nations among whom you have dispersed us. And now all your decrees are true, when you deal with me as my faults deserve, and those of my ancestors. For we have neither kept your commandments, nor walked in truth before you. So now do with me as you will. Be pleased to take my life from me, so that I may be delivered from earth and become earth again. Better death than life for me, for I have endured groundless insult and am in deepest sorrow. Lord, be pleased to deliver me from this affliction. Let me go away to my everlasting home. Do not turn your face from me, O Lord. Better death for me than life prolonged. In the face of unrelenting misery, I can no longer bear to listen to insults. Section 3. Sarah. It chanced on the same day that Sarah, the daughter of Raguel, who lived in Media and Ecbana, also heard insults from one of her father's maids, for she had been given in marriage 7 times, and Asmodeus, the worst of demons, had killed her bridegrooms one after another before ever they had slept with her as a man with his wife. The servant girl said, "Yes, you kill your bridegrooms yourself. That makes 7 already to whom you have been given, and you have not once been in luck yet. Just because your bridegrooms have died, that is no reason for punishing us. Go and join them, and may we be spared the sight of any child of yours." That day she grieved, she sobbed, she went up to her father's room intending to hang herself. But then she thought, suppose they were to blame my father. They would say, you had an only daughter whom you loved, and now she has hanged herself for grief. I cannot cause my father a sorrow which would bring down his old age to the dwelling of the dead. I should do better not to hang myself, but to beg the Lord to let me die, and not live to hear any more insults. And at this, by the window, with outstretched arms, she said this prayer: You are blessed, O God of mercy. May your name be blessed forever, and may all things you have made bless you everlastingly. I turn my face and raise my eyes to you. Let your word deliver me from earth. I can hear myself insulted no longer. O Lord, you know that I have remained pure. No man has touched me. I have not dishonored your name or my father's name in this land of exile. I am my father's only daughter. He had no other child as heir. He has no brother at his side, nor has he any kinsman left for whom I ought to keep myself. I have lost 7 husbands already. Why should I live any longer? If it does not please you to take my life, then look on me with pity. I can no longer bear to hear myself defamed. This time the prayer of each of them found favor before the Lord, the glory of God, and Raphael was sent to bring remedy to them both. He was to take the white spots from the eyes of Tobit, so that he might see God's light with his own eyes. And he was to give Sarah, the daughter of Raguel, as bride to Tobias, son of Tobit, and to rid her of Asmodeus, that worst of demons. For it was to Tobias before all other suitors that she belonged by right. Tobit was coming back from the courtyard into the house at the same moment as Sarah, the daughter of Raguel, was coming down from the upper room. And of course, Raphael is an angel. Section 4, Tobias. Chapter 4. The same day, Tobit remembered the silver that he had left with Gabriel at Rages in Media and thought, I have come to the point of praying for death. I should do well to call my son Tobias and tell him about the money before I die. He summoned his son Tobias and told him, When I die, give me an honorable burial. Honor your mother and never abandon her all the days of your life. Do all that she wants and give her no reason for sorrow. Remember, my child, all the risks she ran for your sake when you were in her womb. And when she dies, bury her at my side in the same grave. My child, be faithful to the Lord all your days. Never entertain the will to sin or to transgress his laws. Do good works all the days of your life. Never follow ways that are not upright. For if you act in truthfulness, you will be successful in all your actions, as everyone is who practices what is upright. Set aside part of your goods for almsgiving. Never turn your face from the poor, and God will never turn his from you. Measure your alms by what you have. If you have much, give more. If you have little, do not be afraid to give less in alms. So doing, you will lay up for yourself a great treasure for the day of necessity. For almsgiving delivers from death and saves people from passing down to darkness. Almsgiving is a most effective offering for all those who do it in the presence of the Most High. My child, avoid all those loose conduct. Choose a wife of your father's stock. Do not take a foreign wife outside your father's tribe. because we are the children of the prophets. Remember Noah, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, our ancestors from the beginning. All of them took wives from their own kindred, and they were blessed in their children, and their race will inherit the earth. You too, my child, must love your own brothers. Never presume to despise your brothers, the sons and daughters of your people. Choose your wife from among them, for pride brings ruin and much worry. Idleness causes need and poverty, for the mother of famine is idleness. Do not keep back until next day the wages of those who work for you. Pay them at once. If you serve God, you will be rewarded. Be careful, my child, in all you do, well disciplined in all your behavior. Do to no one what you would not want done to you. Do not drink wine to the point of drunkenness. Do not let excess be your traveling companion. Give your bread to those who are hungry, and your clothes to those who lack clothing. Of whatever you own in plenty, devote a proportion to almsgiving, and when you give alms, do it ungrudgingly. Be generous with bread and wine on the graves of upright people, but not for the sinner. Ask advice of every wise person. Never scorn any profitable advice. Bless the Lord God in everything. Beg him to guide your ways and bring your paths and purposes to their end. For wisdom is not the property of every nation. Their desire for what is good is conferred by the Lord. At his will he lifts up or he casts down to the depths of the dwelling of the dead. So now, my child, remember these precepts and never let them fade from your heart. Now, my child, I must tell you, I have left 10 talents of silver with Gabriel, son of Gabrias, at Rages in Media. Do not be afraid, my child. If we have grown poor, you have great wealth if you fear God. If you shun every kind of sin, and if you do what is pleasing to the Lord your God. Ooh, we're at 22 minutes. Well, we'll start at section 5, chapter 5, tomorrow, God willing. And as always, I love you.